When I was younger, I used to think that family meant something unshakable. You know, the kind of thing you can always come back to. No matter how far you go, how successful or not you become, they'd be there. Supportive, honest, loyal. Maybe that was naive of me. Or maybe I just didn't expect that the people who raised me could lie so smoothly to my face, then hand my hard-earned money to someone else like it was pocket change. My name's Ernesto, I'm 31, and up until 3 months ago, I thought I was the golden child in a very normal, slightly dysfunctional, but ultimately loving family. Turns out, I was just the bank. Growing up, it was just me, my younger brother Damon, and our parents. My mom worked part-time at a local clinic, and my dad was in construction. Damon and I were close as kids, but things started shifting once we hit our teens. He became the charismatic one, the one who could talk his way out of trouble with a grin. And me? I was the responsible one, the quiet one, the one who always did the right thing. That pattern never changed, not even into adulthood. Damon dropped out of college after 2 semesters, floated between jobs, and eventually settled into the comfortable position of figuring things out. Meanwhile, I grinded my way through university, built a tech startup from scratch, and after nearly a decade of sleepless nights and failed prototypes, I finally sold it last year for more money than I ever thought I'd see in a lifetime. It wasn't flashy, no media coverage, just a quiet, multi-million-dollar acquisition and a lot of relief. After the sale, I started getting more calls from my parents. They'd always supported me verbally, but they never really got what I did, still called me the computer guy. Suddenly, though, they were proud, very proud. My dad mentioned how maybe now he could finally retire early and do some projects around the house. My mom joked, half-joked, about me buying them a place in Florida one day. And then one day, they told me they were thinking about converting their old garage into a guest suite for when I visited. My childhood home wasn't big, but the garage had potential, and they made it sound like a sweet gesture. Somewhere I could stay when I visited. "We just want you to have a little space of your own," my mom said. "Something nice. You've done so much for us." I didn't ask too many questions. Honestly, I felt touched. Of course, when they asked for a little help funding the renovation, I agreed without hesitation. It wasn't even a large amount compared to what I had in the bank. Around $85,000, broken into 2 wire transfers over 6 months. My dad sent me photos of the construction, new walls going up, fancy countertops being installed, even a little stone pathway leading to a private entrance. I was happy to help. It felt like a tangible way to give back. And then they stopped sending updates. At first, I didn't think much of it. They said the work was taking longer than expected, that the contractor was being slow, and then there were delays with the appliances. My calls went unanswered sometimes, but again, I trusted them. Why wouldn't I? They were my parents. Still, something started feeling off. It was the way they danced around the topic when I brought it up, like they were suddenly unsure of what to say. My mom said they'd surprise me when it was done, that I'd love it. Then 2 weeks ago, I let slip that I'd be flying back to town for a few days for a friend's wedding and figured I'd stay in the new suite. The phone went silent for a beat. Then my mom gave a weird laugh and said, "Oh, honey, the guest suite isn't really ready yet. Maybe next time." That was the first real crack in the story. I could hear the hesitation in her voice, like she was scrambling. I didn't push then, but I decided to keep my visit to myself after that call. Booked my ticket, flew in quietly, stayed with an old friend for a night, then showed up at my parents' doorstep unannounced. I had a small gift with me, trying to play it cool. My mom answered the door in a robe, visibly startled, and I gave her a big smile and said, "Surprise." She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Ernie, wow. We weren't expecting you until next month." I stepped inside before she could protest. The house smelled different, more like cinnamon and baby powder than I remembered. There were toys scattered in the living room, a diaper bag by the couch. I blinked. "Is Damon here?" She flinched like I'd slapped her. Yes. Just for a bit. They're visiting." "They?" Before she could answer, Damon came strolling in from the hallway in sweatpants, holding a baby monitor. "Yo, Ernesto. Didn't know you were coming by, man." I froze. Damon looked way too comfortable, like he lived there. His wife, Brielle, appeared a second later holding their toddler, and she gave me a tight smile that said she wasn't thrilled to see me either. And then I noticed Damon's hoodie. It had a logo, the same one I'd seen on one of the contractor shirts from the renovation photos Dad had sent. That was when the weight started settling in my chest. Something wasn't right. The pieces were too clean, too rehearsed. And the baby monitor? Why would they need that if they were just visiting? I turned to my mom slowly. So the guest suite. Is it done? Her mouth opened. Closed. Yes. But it's occupied right now. By who? Before she could fumble out a lie, my dad appeared behind me. He looked tired. Older than I remembered. His eyes flicked from me to Damon to the baby, then back to me. And that's when he leaned in, voice low, barely above a whisper. Please don't make a scene. I didn't. I just smiled. And then I pulled the folder out of my bag, the one I'd had drawn up by my attorney after the third red flag, and set it gently on the kitchen counter. Of course not, I said, calm and even. I'm just here to visit the property I own. Damon's smile faltered. Brielle's arms tightened around the baby. My mom looked like she might faint. And as they flipped open the first page, heavy legal jargon, deed transfer clauses, financial records, the color drained from their faces like someone had cut the power. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed, and waited for the truth to finally start cracking through their carefully rehearsed little performance. The silence after they read that first page was almost poetic. You could hear the hum of the fridge, the soft clatter of the baby's rattle as it slipped from Brielle's hand onto the tile. My dad's lips parted like he wanted to say something, but nothing came out. Damon stared at the document like he couldn't quite read it, like the words refused to make sense. And me? I just stood there and watched. Calm, collected, arms crossed, every muscle in my body coiled tight beneath the surface. Because while that folder was just a piece of paper to them, to me, it was a line in the sand. And they had no idea how deep they'd crossed it. My dad finally cleared his throat. Son, Ernesto, this doesn't mean what it looks like. I tilted my head. Oh, because it looks like I own the property your son is squatting in. My mom stepped in fast, hands raised like she could calm the storm down with enough motherly energy. Ernie, please. It's not like that. Damon just needed a place, just for a little while. You know how hard it's been for them. Do I? I said, voice low. Because last I checked, Damon was working on a crypto project the last time he called me. That was 9 months ago. Brielle spoke for the first time. You don't have to talk about him like he's not here. I turned to her. I wouldn't, if he acted like he was here, like he was part of this family. But let's be real, Damon's never had to clean up his own messes. Not when you're all out here throwing him a life raft every time he sinks his own boat. The tension in the room crackled. My mom looked like she might cry. My dad rubbed his forehead like he was trying to wake up from a nightmare. Damon finally found his voice. Man, come on. You really gonna do this? Over what, some money? You've got millions now. What's 80 grand to you? That was it. That right there, that sentence, that tone, that smug shrug of entitlement, was the nail in the coffin. Because it wasn't about the money. It had never been about the money. It was about the lie. About being used. About trusting them, helping them, only to find out they'd built a brand new life for someone else, on my back, and then had the audacity to ask me not to make a scene when I showed up. I laughed once. Short. Cold. You think this is about the money? I stepped closer. It's about the fact that you looked me in the eye, Damon, and said you were couch hopping. Said you were sleeping in your car. Meanwhile, you were living in the guest suite I paid for, that I legally own. And instead of telling me the truth, you and your wife moved in, posted about it on Instagram. New beginnings, I believe the caption was, and started telling people you bought the place. Brielle turned red. Damon blinked. You saw that? Oh, I saw everything. Including the LinkedIn update where you called yourself a real estate entrepreneur. You flipped a garage, Damon, that you didn't pay for, on land you don't own, with a couch you probably didn't even carry in yourself. That's when my dad finally raised his voice. Enough. Ernesto, you're blowing this out of proportion. Damon needed help. We thought you'd understand. We were going to tell you eventually. My head snapped toward him. When I showed up one day and found out my key didn't work. Or maybe when you handed Damon a second mortgage on the house and told the bank I'd co-signed. You don't get to use eventually as a moral excuse when you've had months to come clean. My mom started crying. We just wanted him to have a chance. No, I said sharply. You wanted him to have my chance. You wanted to hand him something he didn't earn because you knew he'd never make it on his own. And instead of asking me like adults, you lied. You used me. You pitched it like it was a place for me to stay, when really it was a backup plan for your favorite. My voice cracked on that last part. I hadn't meant to say it. Not out loud. But there it was. My mom flinched like I'd hit her. That's not true, isn't it? I asked quietly now. Because I think it is. I think it's always been true. Damon messes up, he gets another chance. I mess up, I get a lecture. I bring home straight A's. Don't get cocky. Damon gets a C- in English, and you throw him a pizza party because at least he passed. Damon scoffed. Oh my God, are you really bringing up school? From like 15 years ago. Yes, I snapped, louder than I meant. Because it's never stopped. You've always coasted. Always been bailed out. You treat life like a revolving credit card and assume someone else will pay the interest. My dad stepped forward, putting a hand on the folder. Okay, this has gone too far. Just take this and let's all sit down. We can talk about how to make it work. I looked down at his hand, then up at him. You still don't get it. He looked confused. My mom was still wiping her eyes, avoiding my gaze. Brielle had taken the toddler into the other room, clearly done with the drama. And Damon? He was scrolling his phone, like none of this mattered. That's when the switch flipped. You know what? I said, keep it. Keep the suite. Keep the house. Live in it. Raise your grandkid in it. Pretend it's yours. But don't expect another cent from me. Not for the roof. Not for the plumbing. Not for your retirement. Because this, I tapped the folder, was your last withdrawal. My dad blinked. Don't be dramatic. I leaned in slightly. No, I'm being specific. I paid for a renovation you lied about. I was misled into wiring funds under false pretenses. And now your other son is living in the property, claiming ownership, and trying to monetize it. If I wanted to press charges, I could. But I won't. Because I'm not like you. There was a long pause. Then Damon, ever the golden child, chuckled. Man, you really think you're better than us just because you've got some money now. I smiled without warmth. No, Damon. I think I'm better because I never stole from my own family. And then I walked out. Didn't wait for a goodbye. Didn't look back. Just walked out the door and into the late afternoon sunlight, heart pounding, hands shaking, a tight knot in my throat. For days. That's how long the silence lasted. For whole days after I left my parents' house. After I left my house, before the next blow landed. I should have known better than to let my guard down. I should have known they wouldn't go quietly. But I was still reeling. Angry, sure, but also tired. Exhausted in a way I hadn't felt since my startup days, when I used to sleep under my desk and live off bad coffee and worse ramen. That night, I was in a hotel room across town. Nothing fancy, just something quiet with a desk and blackout curtains. I was sitting on the bed in sweats, laptop open, trying to rewire my brain and pour my energy into something useful. Emails, project proposals, tax documents, anything to distract myself. Then my phone buzzed. It was a fraud alert from my bank. Unusual activity. 2 wire transfer attempts flagged, and 1 frozen pending confirmation. Both tied to a linked account I'd opened a few years back for my dad. Back when he had shoulder surgery and couldn't work for 6 months. I'd set it up to help them pay bills, tied it to my main account as an emergency buffer. A stupid, generous gesture I'd completely forgotten about until now. My heart dropped. I clicked into the activity log. 2 $15,000 transfers were attempted to an account I didn't recognize, under Damon's name. The second hadn't gone through. Thankfully, the bank's algorithm caught the mismatch in typical transaction behavior, but the first had already cleared. I stared at the screen like it would reverse itself if I looked hard enough. I called the fraud department immediately, flagged the account, shut down the link, and froze everything until they could do a formal investigation. It took hours, and by the time the call ended, it was nearly 3 a.m. I just sat there, phone in hand, the hotel room quiet except for the hum of the mini fridge and the static buzz of my thoughts. They really tried to steal from me. Again. And this time, they didn't even bother with the pretense. My own father gave Damon access to a financial link I created for him. One meant to keep their lights on, their medicine cabinet full, their mortgage paid, and they used it to funnel cash behind my back. Like I was just a number. A wallet. A nameless account. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just shut down. I canceled the rest of my trip. Didn't tell anyone. I flew back to the city the next morning and went straight to my condo without speaking to a soul. I turned my phone off, ignored texts from friends asking how the wedding was, and just disappeared into my space. For 2 weeks. It was rock bottom, in the quietest way. Not the kind of collapse you see in movies where someone screams into the night or throws dishes at a wall. Mine was slower, heavier, like trying to breathe through wet concrete. I barely ate. I didn't work. I'd wake up, shower, sit on the couch, and stare at nothing for hours. Sometimes I'd replay old voicemails from my parents, back when they sounded proud of me. Sometimes I'd scroll through old texts from Damon, funny gifs, casual updates, moments that felt real, and wonder if any of them ever were. The worst part? I kept trying to justify it. They needed help. They were just desperate. They thought you'd say no, so they didn't ask. But eventually, even the lies I told myself stopped working. What they did wasn't about desperation. It was about entitlement. About a pattern that had been running since we were kids, a pattern I was only now brave enough to admit. And that realization? That's when things started to shift. Not all at once. There was no grand aha moment. Just a slow rebuild, brick by brick. I started by journaling. Not typing, writing by hand. Something about the ink on paper felt grounding. Like I was clawing my way back to the surface, one messy paragraph at a time. Then I started running again. Just a mile at first. Then 2. Then 5. Something about pounding the pavement helped shake the anger loose. Helped remind me I had control over at least something. After that came the calls. I finally picked up when my friend Lucas called again. He'd been at the wedding, the one I bailed on without notice. When I told him everything, he didn't even try to hide the fury in his voice. They what? Bro, I don't even have words. I do, I muttered. Too many. He came over that night. We ordered takeout, cracked open a bottle of something expensive I'd been saving, and just sat on the balcony trading stories in silence. At some point, I stopped feeling guilty for talking about it. It wasn't betrayal anymore. It was reality. And that's when I started planning. Not revenge. Not yet. Just distance. Legal distance. The very next morning, I met with a lawyer, one I'd used years ago during the acquisition. I laid everything out. The deed, the transfers, the false claims, the Instagram captions, even the photos they'd sent me mid-renovation that were later uploaded to Damon's entrepreneurial portfolio site. I want everything airtight, I told him. They don't get another inch. And he delivered. Within a week, we'd locked down the property rights, updated the official ownership listing under a trust, restructured every financial tie I'd ever had with them, and filed a formal notice of misuse for the bank transfers. Damon was flagged. The funds were frozen. An investigation was pending. I didn't press criminal charges yet, but I made it very clear through legal language that I retained the right to pursue restitution if the situation escalated. I also had the locks changed. Quietly. Legally. Swiftly. But that wasn't all. While my lawyer handled the paperwork, I started building something else. Something new. A project I'd been toying with for months, but had shelved because I didn't want to deal with family questions or Damon trying to collaborate. It was a scholarship fund. Small at first. Targeted. Specifically for first-generation college students in tech. Kids who, like me, had to figure it all out the hard way. But unlike before, this time I wasn't doing it to impress my parents. I wasn't doing it to prove I'd made it. I was doing it because it mattered. Because I could. For the first time in a long time, my success didn't feel tied to their approval. It was mine. I also started investing in smaller startups. Ones with scrappy founders who reminded me of myself at 22. I didn't advertise it. I didn't post about it. I just sat across from these nervous, brilliant kids in coffee shops and co-working spaces and said, "Pitch me." And when they did, I listened. It felt good. It felt right. One of those founders, a soft-spoken kid named Mateo, ended up becoming a close friend. He dropped out of college to care for his mom and was building a mobile mental health app for young men. He had no connections, no funding, just grit. I cut him a check on the spot. "Why me?" he asked, stunned. "Because someone should have done it for me," I said. "And because I know what it's like to be underestimated." He smiled, and in that moment, I realized something. All the anger I'd carried for the past few weeks, it had a purpose. It wasn't just dead weight. It was fuel. Fuel for something better. Of course, just as I started feeling steady again, just as the pieces of my life were rearranging into something solid, I got the text. It was from my mom. Just a single message. "We need to talk. Please." I stared at it for a long time. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened Instagram and pulled up Damon's account. The most recent post caught my eye immediately. It was a photo of him and Brielle standing in front of the guest suite. Big smiles. Their kid on Damon's shoulders. The caption? Our forever home. Grateful beyond words. And then I saw the location tag. They had listed it on Airbnb. That's when everything inside me went still. Because that wasn't desperation. That was greed. That was Damon turning my property into his income stream. That was the final straw. I stood up, grabbed my coat, and headed to my lawyer's office. It was time to stop playing nice. The truth is, I don't like revenge stories. Or at least, I didn't. I used to think they were petty. A waste of time. That the best way to win was to just keep rising. To let your success be your answer. But sometimes, success isn't enough. Sometimes, the only way to move forward is to go back and finish the chapter properly. To close it with a period, not an ellipsis. And this chapter? It wasn't over until the people who turned me into a wallet learned what it felt like to lose something that mattered. I didn't text my mother back. I didn't reply to Damon's passive-aggressive message about misunderstandings. I didn't engage when Brielle tried to tag me in a family business promotional post. I went silent. Completely. And while they were celebrating themselves in my house, with my money, I started laying the groundwork. First stop, my lawyer's office. Again, I walked in and dropped a folder on his desk, full of screenshots. Damon's Airbnb listing. Reviews. Photos of the property interior I recognized from my own renovation blueprints. I'd paid for every appliance, every piece of furniture, even the landscaping outside. They hadn't changed a thing. They were renting it out weekly, charging nearly $300 a night, calling it a luxury detached unit with custom designer finishes. There was even a guest comment that made my skin crawl. The host was super accommodating. Can't believe I found this place. It felt like I was staying in a brand new modern guest house. Loved meeting the owners. Owners. Plural. I leaned back in the leather chair and watched my attorney flip through the folder. His brow furrowed deeper with every page. This is brazen, he muttered. They didn't even try to hide it. Nope, I said. They've been running it for 6 weeks. Unauthorized commercial use on residential property you own. That's a breach of occupancy terms and a violation of city short-term rental ordinances, especially since it's unregistered. I smirked. Thought that might interest you. Do you want me to file? Not yet. Let's start with a cease and desist. Hit them with the legalese. Make them squirm. He nodded. Done. Anything else? I hesitated. Yeah, I want to go a little deeper. He closed the folder and looked up. How deep? I stared at him. All the way. See, while Damon was busy acting like a landlord, I'd been doing some digging. Not just into the Airbnb stuff, but into him. His crypto startup turned out to be a Telegram group chat where he pitched half-baked ideas and tried to sell NFT sketches drawn by Brielle's cousin. His website was built on a free template and still had lorem ipsum in 2 tabs. And the kicker? He was behind on taxes. 2 years' worth. My guy hadn't filed since 2023. I passed that intel to my lawyer, who passed it to a CPA, who found even more. Damon had taken out a small business loan using the house's guest suite as collateral. He'd forged a valuation document, poorly, and claimed it was part of a portfolio of owned assets. And that's when I saw it. The opening. Because now it wasn't just about eviction or restitution. It was fraud. Tangible. Trackable. Stupid fraud, but fraud nonetheless. He'd overplayed his hand, and I had the receipts. The next step was making contact, but not with them. With the right people. I called up an old friend, Malik, who ran a boutique real estate agency in town. Sharp guy, discreet, had helped me quietly unload some properties in the past. Ernie, he said when he picked up, I was just thinking about you. What's going on? You still handle commercial listings? For the right properties. I've got one. He chuckled. You usually don't sell. I'm not looking to sell. I'm looking to displace. There was a pause. Then, a knowing laugh. Tell me everything. We met that week and I walked him through it. Showed him the property value, the original construction permits, the new appliances, even the square footage I'd paid to expand. And then I showed him the rental income the unit was generating. Could be a killer passive investment, he said. That's what my brother thought too. He looked at me. You want me to list it under the trust? No. I want you to start generating interest. Quietly. Build buzz. But don't take any offers yet. Not until I say so. Got it. You want to shake the tree first. I smiled. Exactly. We agreed on a soft target listing price, well above what Damon could ever hope to afford if he tried to buy the unit outright. I didn't want him to want it. I wanted him to panic over the idea of losing it, to watch the walls close in, slowly, and realize they were built with my bricks. But I wasn't done, because Damon wasn't the only one who'd burned me. My parents, especially my dad, had gone radio silent since my unannounced visit. Not even a courtesy call. It was like they'd just erased me from the equation once I didn't play ball. But they'd made one critical error. They hadn't removed me from their accounts. I still had limited access to their property insurance, to their old retirement accounts. I couldn't touch the funds, but I could see the activity. And what I saw made my jaw tighten. They'd started cashing out early. My dad had pulled nearly half of his retirement to pay down some mysterious loan debt, no doubt covering Damon's mess. My mom had drained her emergency savings. They were spiraling. And the most ironic part? They thought I didn't know. So I started preparing for the fallout. Not to save them, but to make sure when the pieces hit the floor, they wouldn't take me down with them. I met with my banker, cut off every account I'd ever shared with them, canceled the standing medical directive I'd foolishly left in my dad's name, rewrote my will, secured the trust, set up an LLC under a different name to receive rental proceeds going forward, should I choose to take control of the property again. And while I did all that, I waited. I waited as Malik let the whispers of a hot investment property drift through his network. I waited as the cease and desist letter landed on Damon's doorstep and the Airbnb listing quietly vanished 2 hours later. I waited as my parents began to piece together the legal mess looming around their son's latest disaster and realized they couldn't fix it with a phone call and a casserole. And then I got the voicemail. It was my mom. Her voice was thin, tired. "Ernie, honey, we got your letter. And I know you're angry. You have every right. I want to talk. Please, before anything else happens." We didn't know what Damon was doing. We didn't mean for things to go this far. "Just call me, okay?" I listened to it twice. Not because I missed her, but because I needed to hear how long it took her to say sorry. Spoiler, she didn't. Not once. The next day, I received an envelope at my condo. Handwritten return address. Inside was a single letter, no name signed. Just 5 words written in blocky penmanship. "You're destroying this family. Stop." No punctuation. No explanation. I didn't need one. It was Damon. And just like that, I had everything I needed. Because here's the thing about people like Damon and my parents. They rely on history. On guilt. They think they know your moves because they've seen your playbook since you were 5 years old. But the Ernesto they knew? He didn't exist anymore. I wasn't playing their game. I was setting the board for mine. And the final piece? That would come at the city council meeting, where Damon, emboldened and arrogant, had applied for a short-term rental license under his own name, using documents that still listed my parents as primary homeowners and himself as a co-residing property stakeholder. The hearing was public, and I had a front-row seat. I showed up in a tailored navy blazer, hair neatly combed back, sat quietly in the 3rd row. Damon stood at the podium, grinning like a politician, presenting slides about his family-owned hospitality venture. He even brought Brielle and their kid, all dressed like a Christmas card. The council asked him about ownership. He said, "It's a family trust. We manage it together." The council asked him for documentation. He handed over a folder. And that's when the chairwoman frowned. "This says the trust is solely managed by an Ernesto Marquez." Damon's smile twitched. "Right, that's my brother. He's not involved in the day-to-day, though. Yet the financial disclosures list only him. And we received a conflicting document this morning stating that the property was not authorized for rental use." I folded my hands in my lap and met his eyes for the first time. His face drained. The chairwoman turned to the room. "Is Mr. Ernesto Marquez present?" I stood up, and I smiled. When I stood up in that council chamber, the room didn't gasp or whisper or erupt the way it does in movies. No, it went quiet in the most devastating way possible. The kind of silence that doesn't need drama because the truth is loud enough on its own. Damon's face drained like someone pulled a plug at the base of his neck. His lips moved, but no words came out. Brielle tightened her grip on their toddler. My parents, who'd slunk in through the back thinking this was just a small local meeting, froze with their coats half off. And the chairwoman, the most no-nonsense woman I'd ever seen, looked at me as if I'd just walked into my own living room and found a stranger wearing my shoes. "Mr. Marquez," she said, motioning me forward. Would you like to speak to the council? I walked up the aisle slowly. Calm. Steady. Every step felt like reclaiming something I didn't realize I'd lost years ago. When I reached the podium, I nodded respectfully to the council and spoke into the mic. Yes, I would. I didn't look at Damon. Not yet. I kept my eyes on the council, keeping my voice even and clear. My name is Ernesto Marquez. I'm the sole trustee and owner of the property being discussed today. I did not authorize any short-term rental use. I did not grant management rights to the individuals applying, and the occupants currently living in the unit moved in without my knowledge or permission. I let that sink in. A few people in the back shifted in their seats. Someone scribbled notes. A council member glanced at Damon, who looked like he was trying to disappear into the carpet. My brother, I continued, has been representing himself as the owner. He has listed the property as his. He has collected income from guests, and he applied for a rental license with fraudulent documentation. This time, I did turn and look at him. He wilted. Furthermore, I added, I have filed for a cease and desist, and there is an ongoing review with legal counsel regarding financial misconduct. You could feel the shift in the room. The council did not play around with rental fraud. Not in that city. When I sat down, Damon stepped up to the microphone, not because he was invited, but because panic makes people stupid. I didn't mean to. He said I could. This is all a misunderstanding, he stammered. The chairwoman held up a hand. Mr. Marquez, please sit. At this time, the council has heard enough. He froze. Then, slowly, he stepped back, eyes flicking helplessly toward our parents. The council denied the license on the spot. Not only that, they flagged the entire application for review, which meant fines, inspections, possible charges. Damon swayed like he might faint. The hearing ended. Chairs scraped. Papers shuffled. And I walked out without saying a word to any of them. Only when I reached the parking lot did I hear footsteps pounding behind me. Ernie, wait. It was my dad. He grabbed my arm, not hard, but with that urgent, desperate grip parents use when they realize they no longer have control. His voice was raw. What are you doing? You're ruining Damon's life. I looked down at his hand until he let go. I didn't ruin anything, I said quietly. I just exposed it. He's your brother. He's a grown man who forged documents and stole from me. My dad shook his head like the world had suddenly tilted the wrong way. You could have handled this privately. I tried, I said. You told me not to make a scene. So I didn't. Damon did. My mom caught up to us, breathless. Please, Ernesto. Please. We can fix this. Just talk to us. Don't let this tear the family apart. I stared at her for a long moment, and then something inside me settled. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to win their approval. I wasn't bending. I wasn't shrinking. I wasn't apologizing for being hurt. I wasn't making myself smaller so my brother could fit in the frame. I was done. I didn't tear it apart, I said. You broke it when you chose Damon's comfort over my honesty. When you lied to me. When you stole from me. When you let him take everything I built and pretend it was his. My dad's jaw tightened. We were just trying to help him. And you never tried to help me, I said softly. Not once. That hit them harder than anything else I'd said. My mom's eyes filled, but this time I didn't rush to comfort her. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't shrink. We're your parents, she whispered. Then you should have acted like it, I replied. I walked away. They didn't follow. I expected the fallout to take weeks. It took 48 hours. The cease and desist forced Damon to shut down his rental page immediately. City inspectors arrived 2 days later and slapped the unit with fines for unregistered short-term rental use and occupancy violations. Damon tried to argue. They didn't care. They cared even less when they found the illegal kitchenette he'd added without permits, something I hadn't known about until that moment. More fines. More violations. Then the bank investigation completed. The $15,000 stolen from my linked account required repayment immediately. And because the bank considered it a fraudulent withdrawal, the penalty fees hit hard. Damon tried to get my parents to cover it. They couldn't. My dad had already spent down half his retirement bailing Damon out of previous problems he'd kept secret from everyone, including my mom. When the truth surfaced, they had a fight loud enough that the neighbors heard it. My mom left the house for 2 nights. The family group chat exploded. Relatives called me from every direction trying to get my side or pressure me to have a heart. I ignored all of them. By the end of the week, Damon received a notice from the bank demanding repayment within 10 business days, or the debt would be escalated to collections and possible legal action. He didn't have the money, but that was only half the fallout. Because once the rental violations hit the public record, Malik called me. "You want the good news or the great news?" I rubbed my temples. "Give me the good. There's massive interest in the property. Investors are circling already. And the great. 2 of the interested buyers sent letters offering a full cash purchase at your target price. Sight unseen. As in, right now." I let that sink in. Selling meant one thing. Damon and his family would be forcibly removed. Legally. No theatrics. No arguments. No guilt trips. The new owner would handle everything. They'd have no choice but to leave. And the best part? I wouldn't even have to be involved. I took a breath. "Take the highest offer," I said quietly. "Full cash. Quick close." "You got it." The sale went through in 5 days. 5. I didn't attend the closing. Didn't need to. My lawyer handled everything. The funds went straight into the trust. Clean. Simple. Final. The new owner gave Damon 48 hours to vacate. My parents called me nonstop. My mom cried. My dad begged. Damon left voicemails threatening legal action, then switched to begging, then switched to blaming me for destroying his family's stability. I didn't respond. I didn't need to, because this wasn't revenge driven by anger anymore. It was accountability. It was closure. It was reclaiming my life from people who had used me as their safety net for too long. 2 weeks later, I drove past the house on a quiet afternoon, not to gloat, just to see it one last time. A moving truck sat in the driveway. Damon was outside, shoving boxes into the back while Brielle stood nearby, looking exhausted and furious. My parents were on the porch, watching with a kind of stunned sorrow. None of them saw me. I sat in my car for a moment, hands resting on the wheel, and let a slow breath leave my chest. It didn't feel triumphant. It felt peaceful, like something had finally clicked back into place. As I pulled away, my phone buzzed. A message from the Scholarship Foundation. "Your fund has been approved. First round of students selected. Congratulations." For the first time in months, I smiled, really smiled. By the end of that year, my investment in Mateo's startup blossomed into a full venture launch. My scholarship funded 8 students. My mental health felt lighter than it had since childhood, and I never reconnected with my family. Not out of anger, but out of acceptance. Sometimes the people who raised you don't grow with you. Sometimes letting go is the only way to reclaim who you were always meant to be. The last time I ever drove by my parents' house, the guest suite, lights were off. The yard was silent. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like something had been taken from me. I felt free. And I realized something simple, something powerful, something I wish I had known years earlier. Walking away isn't losing. It's choosing yourself. And this time, I chose me. And that was the moment I finally understood. I hadn't destroyed the family. I had simply stopped letting them destroy me.